I came back home for my mother's 70th birthday. Everyone smiled, the table was set, laughter filled the air. And yet, I felt like a stranger in a family album where my face had been torn out. They thought I was weak, just another failure to pity or ignore. But when I found the photograph with my name scratched off and heard what my sister whispered behind closed doors, I knew this wasn't a family gathering. It was a stage, and I was the final act they wanted to erase. They thought I wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. The invitation came on heavy cream stationery, with my name written in my mother's elegant cursive. It smelled faintly of lavender and formality. "Please join us to celebrate June Thompson's 70th birthday," it read. There was no "we miss you." No, it would mean the world to her. Just a date, a time, and an address I once called home. I arrived in a navy blue dress I'd bought secondhand the week before, clutching a bottle of mid-range wine and a box of pastries that had already begun to sweat in the summer heat. The front door opened before I even knocked. "There she is!" Margot's voice, sharp and saccharine. Her arms opened wide like a saint greeting a sinner. Her gold necklace sparkled like it had its own source of light. "Mom's in the garden. She'll be so happy you made it." The house was exactly as I remembered it, and nothing like it had been. The wallpaper had changed, the rug was new, and every photo on the wall was of Margot. Graduation, wedding, Christmas in Aspen, her children's smiling faces. My presence was as faint in those frames as it was in their memories. I followed the sounds of laughter to the backyard. Round tables were set beneath strings of warm lights. There was a live string quartet playing something vaguely classical. My mother stood near the rose bushes, a flute of champagne in one hand, her other arm wrapped around Margot's waist like she was afraid she might float away. When she saw me, her smile tightened just slightly. "Claire," she said, kissing my cheek, "you look rested." It was the kind of compliment that held its breath. Dinner was served by a catering staff in black and white. I sat at the far end of the table between Cousin Eli, who didn't remember me, and Aunt Dolores, who never liked me. Conversation ebbed and flowed, but always orbited around Margot. Margot's law firm just made partner. Margot's daughter got into Princeton. Margot's husband built a summer home in Martha's Vineyard. I sipped my wine, smiled when I was supposed to, and nodded like a bobblehead doll on a dashboard. At one point, Margot handed my mother a framed family tree as a gift. It was beautifully drawn, names etched in gold. My name was not among them. "Oh, I think I gave them the wrong version," Margot said, half laughing. "There were so many drafts." No one corrected her. No one looked surprised. I excused myself quietly and wandered inside, away from the perfect garden, the string quartet, the smell of catered beef tenderloin and artificial warmth. As I passed the kitchen, I heard footsteps behind me. Then the voice I knew better than my own. "Don't ruin tonight like you did last time," my mother said, her words low, deliberate. "This is Margot's evening." She didn't wait for a response, just walked away, heels clicking like punctuation. I made my way upstairs to the room that once held all my secrets. The door creaked open, revealing a space I barely recognized. My bed was gone. Boxes were stacked from floor to ceiling, some labeled Ixmas Decor, others just storage. On one box sat an old photo album. I opened it out of instinct, flipping through pages of smiling faces, birthdays, holidays, milestones. There was a photo of Margot in her wedding dress, her arm linked with our mother's, surrounded by bridesmaids. I wasn't there. I was alive. I was her only sister. And I wasn't in a single shot. A dull ache crawled through my chest, settling in my ribs like something trying to hatch. I sat on the edge of a box labeled Donate, suddenly unsure if it referred to the contents or to me. I took a deep breath and closed the album. I pressed my palms against my knees and stood slowly. My reflection in the dusty mirror stared back. Older, softer, eyes slightly bloodshot, a smudge of lipstick faded from the corner of my mouth. And then, without thinking, I opened the closet. It was empty except for one thing, a dress bag, unzipped. Inside was a bridesmaid's dress, mine, from Margot's wedding, with the tag still on. The next morning, I came downstairs to the scent of freshly brewed coffee and the faint sound of my mother humming something old and saccharine. The kitchen looked like a magazine spread, sunlight streaming through polished windows, butter softening in a porcelain dish, toast already golden on the table. "Sit, darling," June said, motioning to the chair with the least amount of sun. "You need to keep your strength up." She placed a plate in front of me without asking. Poached eggs, dry toast, grapefruit with a single cherry in the middle. Exactly what I used to eat when I was 12 and trying to lose weight because Margot said I looked puffy. "I'm not really hungry," I murmured. June didn't respond, just pushed the plate closer and gave me that soft, disappointed look she'd perfected over decades. After breakfast, I tried to go for a walk, just around the block. I needed air, a break from the curated cheerfulness of that house. But as I reached for my coat, my mother appeared, almost like she'd been waiting. "Don't forget, you promised to help with the garden today," she said, voice bright and brittle. "And Margot wanted to show you something in the attic. Can't leave just yet." It wasn't a request. I stayed. Later that afternoon, I walked past the open study door. Margot was inside, leaning against the desk, phone pressed to her ear, her tone casual like she was ordering lunch. "I never had a sister," she laughed, light and easy. "Claire's just Mom's little charity case." The words hit harder than I expected, not because they were new, but because they weren't. She'd said it before, not in those exact words, but in every look, every omission, every party she didn't invite me to. That night, at dinner, I brought up a memory from childhood, the time we'd built a pillow fort together and pretended we were escaping a war. June laughed politely, but Margot blinked at me blankly. "That wasn't me," she said. "I think you're confusing me with someone else." I looked at our mother. She was already refilling her wine glass. Later in the hallway, I tried again. "Do you really not remember that?" Margot smiled with closed lips. "You always had such a vivid imagination." By the third day, I realized I wasn't allowed to leave the house without someone asking where I was going, when I'd be back, and why I needed to go. June's voice followed me everywhere. Gentle reminders, sharp corrections, constant suggestions. "Don't forget your pills. You should really rest. You're starting to look tired again." When I finally snapped, telling her I was fine, that I didn't need monitoring like some wayward child, she pulled back with that wounded grace. "I'm just trying to help, Claire, but you've always been so sensitive. You make everything so dramatic." It was a well-worn script, and I had played my role perfectly, again and again. That evening, I overheard them in the kitchen. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I had gone to get a glass of water and paused when I heard Margot's voice. Low, sharp, stripped of all pretense. "Do you still have the old will? The one where she's not in it? Because I'm done, Mom. I mean it. Enough is enough." I didn't hear my mother's answer. I didn't need to. I barely slept that night. My thoughts spun in dark circles, every memory now tinged with suspicion. I opened a drawer in the guest room, the one that used to be mine, and found a stack of legal pads. Most were blank. One had a list in my mother's handwriting, my name, Margot's name, bullet points underneath. I took a photo and slipped the pad back where I found it. The next morning, my cat wouldn't wake up. He lay curled on the sun-drenched windowsill, too still, too quiet. I touched his back. Cold. His food bowl was empty, water untouched. June found me an hour later, sitting on the bathroom floor with his body in a towel on my lap. "I told you he looked sick yesterday," she said, tone almost annoyed. "You really should pay more attention, Claire." Ah! I buried him in the garden while Margot watched from the porch, sipping lemonade. That evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I went to Margot's room when she was downstairs and opened her phone. She never changed her password. There were photos, dozens, of me, sleeping, sitting at the table, looking out the window. All taken from a distance, from angles that made me look off, wrong, unwell. One of them was from the hallway mirror. I hadn't seen anyone take it. I stared at the screen for a full minute, then scrolled to the most recent image. It was from that morning. I was sitting on the bathroom floor holding my dead cat. and smiling. I called my brother the next morning. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but I figured blood still counted for something. "Claire," he said, his voice cautious. "Everything okay?" I hesitated. "Not really. Something's wrong here. With Mom. With Margot." He sighed. "You always say that." "No," I pressed. "This time it's different. They're watching me, taking pictures. There's something going on with the will." "Claire," he interrupted, his tone shifting to that familiar older brother weariness. "You've always been intense. Maybe you're just reading into things. You've had a rough year. Maybe it's stress." I hung up before he could say the word paranoid. The truth was, it wasn't just this year. The stress had lived inside me for decades, stretching across memories like cracked glass. That afternoon, I drove 3 towns over to see Aunt Lily. She hadn't been invited to the party, and no one mentioned her anymore, like she'd been edited out of the script. But I remembered her soft hands and how she'd always slipped me extra cookies when I was little. Her house smelled like peppermint and dust. When she opened the door, her eyes widened in cautious recognition. "Claire," she said. Well, now that's a surprise. I told her everything. Every shadow, every whisper, every photo on Margot's phone. She listened in silence, face unreadable. When I finished, she simply said, "So it's still happening." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "They tried to break me too," she said, her voice low. "Your mother. She doesn't destroy you with fists. She makes you doubt yourself. Until you volunteer to disappear. Why? Because you don't fit. You remember too much, and you won't play along." The ride home was quiet. I couldn't shake what she said. Volunteer to disappear. That was exactly how it felt. I couldn't sleep that night. Memories began to surface, clawing their way through the walls I'd built. I was 12 when Margot lost the baby. It was a secret then, one not meant for children. But I remembered the whispers, the slammed doors, the way our mother stopped hugging me for months after. One day she sat me down, hands folded in her lap, and said, "Margot was upset because of you. You should have been quieter, kinder. You know how sensitive she is." I hadn't spoken for a week after that. The next morning, I checked my old email, the one tied to family updates and forgotten accounts. It was mostly junk, birthday reminders, old newsletters. But there it was, a message from my mother, dated 7 years ago. Subject, "For the file." I opened it, no text, just an audio file. I clicked play. June's voice came through, cool and professional. "Claire has had episodes since she was a child. Hallucinations, paranoia. She often exaggerates or fabricates memories. This should be considered when making decisions on guardianship or inheritance." My hands trembled. My own mother had pre-written my discrediting in case she ever needed it. Later that week it happened. We were in the kitchen. I'd asked about the will. Again. I was calm. At first. Margot stood behind her, arms crossed. June looked at me with that tired smile. "Claire," she said, "we've talked about this. You always make things harder than they need to be." "You're lying," I said, my voice low. "You've been lying for years." "Darling," she said, turning her back to me. "You're unwell. Everyone sees it. It's sad, really." I stepped forward. She spun back too fast. Her heel caught the rug. She stumbled. I reached out instinctively, but she fell anyway, crashing onto the tile with a sickening sound. She moaned, clutching her wrist. Margot screamed, grabbing the phone. "You psycho! You pushed her!" "No, But it was too late. The police came quickly. Statements were taken. I tried to explain, but Margot was already crying, shaking, her voice frantic. "She's not well," she sobbed. "She's dangerous." They took me in, a cold, fluorescent-lit holding cell, 4 white walls and a metal bench. I sat there for hours, numb. Eventually, a guard opened the door. "Visitor," he said. Margot walked in like she was arriving at a brunch table. She sat opposite me, hands folded, eyes bright. "I told you," she whispered, leaning in. "You were born wrong. Mom knew it. And now everyone else does too." I didn't speak. I just stared. She smiled wider. As she left, another guard slipped into the room. A woman, maybe mid-40s, quiet. She dropped something in my lap, a small folded note. I opened it slowly. In shaky handwriting, it read, "You're not crazy. I know what's happening. The court released me under a conditional evaluation, mandatory check-ins with a therapist, monitored communication, and strict boundaries." I nodded, complied, smiled when they told me to. I played the part they expected, fragile, repentant, uncertain. But something inside me had cracked open, and the light that poured in didn't feel like forgiveness. It felt like fire. Back in my apartment, a sterile little rental with mismatched furniture and peeling paint, I began to dig. I pulled out every box, every folder I'd kept from my years of trying to make sense of June. Old letters, postcards from Margot that never really said anything, financial records I'd stored without reason. Now, they had purpose. I created a wall of connections, names, dates, accounts. Every time June had cut someone off, every time Margot had rewritten a memory, I documented it all. I bought a scanner. I labeled everything. I reached out to a woman I hadn't seen since high school, my cousin Evie. She hadn't spoken to June in over 20 years. The last time I saw her, she was sobbing on the porch while June shouted through a locked door. When Evie picked up my call, she paused for a long time after I introduced myself. "You too?" she said. I met her the next day at a diner outside of town. Her hair was gray now, her voice steadier than I remembered. She brought a folder. Inside, screenshots, old voicemails, a single photograph of her mother, our aunt, being loaded into an ambulance. June had told the family it was a stroke. Evie believed it was stress-induced. After a series of screaming matches about Evie's ungratefulness. "She turns people into villains," Evie said, stirring her coffee, "and then convinces the world she's the victim." I nodded. "That's the script." She leaned in. "I have a recording from 1999. You'll want to hear it." Back in my apartment, I played it on repeat. It was muffled, recorded through a phone or maybe a baby monitor, but clear enough. June's voice. "Claire's not like Margot. She doesn't listen. You have to keep her small or she'll ruin everything." The next day, I hired a lawyer. Not a family lawyer. A defamation and elder abuse specialist. I found a trauma-informed therapist who agreed to assess my case, not as a mental health evaluation, but as a study in gaslighting and emotional coercion. I began building a profile. Then I got strategic. I created an anonymous email account and sent a message to every name in June's holiday card list. The subject line was simple: the truth. The body read, "You've always wondered. Here it is." It included links to redacted documents, quotes from the audio file, and a final line: "Ask her about the will. No signature, no trace." Within days, the family text chain exploded. Not that I was on it, but Evie forwarded me screenshots. Vague outrage, confused defenses, and more than a few silent exits. Then I got creative. I opened a TikTok account under a pseudonym and began telling a story. A woman returns to her childhood home. Everyone calls her crazy. But what if she's not? Each video was a short vignette. No names, no faces, just a voiceover and visuals. Shadowy hallways, an empty picture frame, a bridesmaid's dress with the tag still on. It went viral by accident. People called it haunting. A modern Gothic. They made theories, picked apart clues. Some asked if it was real. Some insisted it wasn't. I said nothing. Then someone recognized the family crest in the background of one shot. A monogrammed napkin. They posted it on Reddit. The internet did what it always does. It found the truth. Within a week, June Thompson was trending. The hashtags were brutal. #matriarch mask, #sister erased, #gaslight garden party. A reporter from a mid-sized paper reached out through the anonymous account. "I believe there's more to this story," he wrote. "I think people deserve to know." I didn't reply. Instead, I refreshed the homepage the next morning and saw the headline: "Respected socialite accused of emotional abuse in viral TikTok series. Family secrets or fiction?" Underneath, a photo of June smiling, framed by roses. I had waited long enough. With the help of my lawyer, I compiled the documents, Bank transfers, audio clips, photos, a medical report from a therapist willing to testify about the pattern of emotional abuse I'd endured. I sent everything, wrapped neatly in digital folders, to 3 places: the court, a trusted journalist from a national publication, and the contact list I'd built over the years from my mother's social circles. 1 hour later, my phone rang nonstop. I didn't answer. That evening, during the 6 o'clock broadcast, the news anchor paused before introducing a developing story. The screen cut to grainy video footage, audio-enhanced subtitles crawling across the bottom. My mother's voice, unmistakable and chilling. She was born broken. I did everything I could, but some people, you just can't fix. The clip ended. Back in the studio, the anchor raised his eyebrows. That was June Thompson, longtime community figure and philanthropist, speaking in a private recording leaked earlier today. More to come. I turned off the TV and sat in silence. The backlash was instant. Old acquaintances posted vague statements about always feeling something was off. Her charities board released a statement distancing themselves. Margot's law firm scrubbed her name from their website within 48 hours. Then came the subpoena. June was summoned to provide testimony regarding her handling of the family trust. The court requested Margot's financial records. Several discrepancies emerged, transfers made under June's name to accounts Margot controlled, dates that coincided with my own bank accounts being unexpectedly closed, even a real estate deal I'd never heard about. And then, unexpectedly, someone reached out to my lawyer, Margot's ex-boyfriend from college. He'd kept letters, dozens of them. In one, Margot described me as the insurance policy, and June as a queen playing chess with broken pieces. In another, she admitted to forging my signature. Twice. We gave them all to the judge. That same night, my phone rang again. It was her. June. I stared at the screen, then answered. "I know what you've done," she said, her voice a brittle whisper. "I told the truth," I replied. "I hope you're ready for what comes next," she said, "because if you make this public, I'll do something you'll never see coming." She hung up. I didn't call back. The next morning, my lawyer received a formal request from a major news network. They wanted me to appear on a special segment, Unmasking the Matriarch. A full hour. Live. I said yes. But when the night came, I didn't show up. Instead, I sent a video, a pre-recorded clip of me seated in front of a blank wall, my hair tied back, my face bare. "My name is Claire Thompson," I said. "This isn't a story about revenge. This is about truth, about what happens when a family chooses silence over love and control over compassion. It's about what it costs to survive that." I didn't cry. I didn't ask for sympathy. I let the silence after my words speak for itself. While the video aired, Margot made a statement on her personal account, denying everything. It backfired. A Reddit post surfaced with proof, her birth certificate, with no mother listed. Then another document leaked, one from the hospital, a closed adoption. Margot wasn't June's biological daughter. I was. It unraveled quickly after that. June had adopted Margot at 4 years old and spent decades shaping her into the perfect projection. I was the real daughter, the inconvenient one, the one who cried too much, who asked too many questions. It turned out the will June kept trying to rewrite wasn't even valid. State law protected original heirs unless a formal, notarized change was processed, and she had never completed it properly. Legally, I was the sole inheritor of her estate. The perfect daughter, the perfect lie. Shattered. But I didn't say a word. I let them dig their own grave. The final blow came a few days later. A clip began circulating online. It was me, again, another video I'd recorded in advance. I looked straight at the camera. This isn't just about my mother, or my sister. This is about anyone who's ever been told that their truth is too messy to believe, that they should smile, be quiet, play along. My story isn't unique, but I'm not ashamed anymore. I paused. Because the real story, it's what you find after the lie ends. I left without a word, no press release, no farewell posts, Just packed 2 suitcases, closed my apartment door behind me, and drove west until the trees changed shape and the air felt lighter. In Oregon, I rented a small cottage on the edge of town, tucked between quiet woods and winding roads. The silence was unfamiliar at first, too clean, too empty, but slowly it became something else. Sacred. I registered a nonprofit under a name that once made me flinch. Quiet House. It began small. A website, a phone line, a safe room with a couch and tea and the kind of silence that invited stories instead of swallowing them. I started receiving letters, emails, anonymous messages, people who'd been gaslit, erased, rewritten inside their own families. Each story hurt. Each one healed something in me. I never used my title. No one called me Miss Thompson here, just Claire. June never faced charges. There was no trial, no courtroom breakdown, no jail time. Just a slow erosion. Her name vanished from boards and gala invites. Her house, once the site of perfect parties, grew weeds at the edges. Friends stopped calling. Donations dried up. The woman who once orchestrated lives like symphonies was left conducting silence. Last I heard, she lived alone. The nurse she hired left after 2 months. The church newsletter listed her as inactive due to health concerns. Margot vanished. No statements, no photos, no forwarding address. Some said she moved to Europe. Others whispered about rehab, a private clinic. But no one knew for sure. The perfect daughter dissolved into myth. And me? I grew. One afternoon, months after moving, I received a letter in a brown envelope with no return address. Inside was a single page, handwritten in delicate, almost trembling cursive. I tried to protect you, it read. I wasn't strong enough to fight her, but I always knew you saw the truth. I'm sorry I didn't say it then. I'm proud of you now. Signed simply, M. I didn't need more. I knew who it was from. A nanny? A housekeeper? The woman who used to hum lullabies in the laundry room and slip me slices of apple when June thought sugar made me too emotional. She had disappeared when I was 9. I thought she'd been fired. Maybe she had. I folded the letter and placed it in a small box beside my bed, along with the first drawing I ever made. 2 stick figures under a sun, one with long hair, the other holding her hand. That night, I stood in front of the mirror, brushing my hair. For years, I saw that girl, tired, half invisible, always trying too hard to be believed, but this time, the face looking back was calm, whole. There was no apology in her eyes, no shame tucked beneath her ribs. I didn't see the girl they tried to erase. I saw the woman who survived her. The following year, I published a book. The Quiet Daughter. I used my full name. I told everything, unfiltered, unpolished. The cruelty masked as care. The birthdays spent on the edge of the frame. The sister who smiled with a dagger behind her back. The mother who crafted a world that made everyone else feel crazy. I didn't write it for them. I wrote it for me, for the people like me. It didn't take long for the book to find its place. First in whispers, then in posts. Then it exploded. Book Talk claimed it as a manifesto. Therapists recommended it. Survivors clung to it. It became a mirror for those who'd spent their lives questioning their reflection. One afternoon, just before closing, I heard a knock at the center's door. A young woman stood outside, maybe 20, hair tucked into a hoodie, hands clenched in her sleeves. "Hi," she said softly. "Sorry, I saw your name online. I read your book." I nodded, opening the door wider. I think I'm a Claire, too." She didn't cry. She didn't need to. I smiled, stepping aside. "Well then," I said gently, "let's start with you.